Hey guys, welcome to Dylan Still Hobbies, and today we are talking about Star Wars The Clone Wars, my top 10 favorite storylines. Okay, so Star Wars The Clone Wars is coming back, and because it's coming back, I decided to watch the entire series over again, and I did basically the biggest binge watch I have done in a long time, but I had a lot of fun doing it. And because of that, I decided to not only update my top 10 favorite Clone Wars characters, which I will leave a link to that video in the description below, but I also decided to kind of figure out what my favorite episodes were. But here's the thing about episodes. There are so many good episodes and story arcs in Star Wars, the Clone Wars, that really, it's not episodes or arcs that I like, it's storylines. It's the story. That's what I decided to do in this video. It's not my top 10 favorite episodes or my top 10 favorite arcs, but my top 10 favorite Clone Wars storylines. So let's go ahead and get into this. Now, with that said, I actually found something really interesting. This is my third time watching the entire series. So, I watched it the first time when it was airing on, of course, Cartoon Network when I was a kid. And then the second time I watched it was before, I believe it was before the end of Rebels came out, before Rebels Season 4 came out. I decided to go back and watch all of Rebels and all of the Clone Wars over again. And I found something interesting. When it comes to the storylines that I remember the most, the storylines that really became my favorite stories are actually not the lore building storylines. You know, actually quite a bit really good lore building episodes. And it's not that I forgot about them, but just for some reason, when I was watching Star Wars The Clone Wars over again, when I got to the lore-building episodes, I was like, oh yeah. You know, it wasn't like, oh, I remembered this right away. It was like, oh yeah. You know, I know when it comes to Star Wars and us nerds who absolutely love Star Wars, lore is just about everything. You know, lore and connectivity in the Star Wars universe is everything to us. But with that said, just for some reason, when I watch Star Wars The Clone Wars, the lore stories really don't end up becoming my favorite stories for some reason. Give a couple shoutouts here to, of course, the Mortis arc. The Mortis arc was a massive lore building arc, and it doesn't make my list, but it was a great arc. And another arc that I really love, the only Yoda arc that we really got was a very large lore building. It was all about Yoda learning how to become a Force Ghost, and so much lore was in that episode. Another one is the Domino Squad. The Domino Squad, believe it or not, actually has a lot of lore in it, because it has a lot of lore on the Stormtroopers and, of course, the Clone Troopers. I look back on Star Wars, the Clone Wars, they're not the first thing that came to my mind, and I really didn't know that until our series over again for the third time. And at number 10, let's get into this. Cad Bane steals a holocron. Oh god, when it comes to Cad Bane, he's obviously one of my favorite characters, and it's actually because of this arc that he becomes one of my favorite characters. He's just absolutely ruthless and just cares about the money. And what he does in this arc truly shows that. It truly does. This is what I even said in my top 10 character review. This is what Boba Fett should have been. Characters care about only the money. But if you have the money, they'll do their job. And they'll do their job very well. And the story is pretty simple. He goes to steal a holocron from the Jedi Temple of all places. That's right, the Jedi Temple, where there's tons and tons of Jedi, including Obi-Wan and Anakin, and our favorite Ahsoka Tano are in there as well. He recruits some help. He has a little droid buddy. And you know, I hate to say it, but the droids in Star Wars are like pets for some reason. Whenever somebody does something really bad to a pet, not like the bow droids, but when you have the assistant droids, they're like pets. They talk to you. They're fun and energetic. I just end up really liking the droids in the show. And what Cad Bane does to his droid, putting a bomb in it and throwing it up into, I think it was the communication center. You see, the Jedi thought he was heading to the communication center. They never even thought that he was going after a holocron. The fact that he just tossed aside his droid without a second thought just shows how ruthless this character is. And I loved it. And then, of course, in the exact same arc, he ends up kidnapping Ahsoka Tano, and ends up kidnapping two or three? I think it was two babies, two Force-sensitive babies. He starts kidnapping kids. Like, who kidnaps kids? And then he actually ends up killing one of the Jedi in the series. Cad Bane steals a holocron. Definitely one of my favorite arcs because it just shows how ruthless Cad Bane is as a character. Let's go ahead to number 9 though. And my number 9 favorite storyline of Star Wars: The Clone Wars is, without a doubt, Rex finds a lost brother. So, what am I talking about here? So, the fact is, there's this one, I think it's only one episode, but Rex gets hurt battling and is forced to stay at these farmer's place, right? Well, turns out the farmer of the place is actually a clone who basically, after he ended up in a really big fight, he wondered why he was doing this. You know, he decided to escape and live a normal life. And it just really shows what Rex could do after the Clone Wars. It gives Rex a chance to reflect on what he is as a clone, what he wants to do as a clone. And the best part of this little storyline is when these battle droids, they're called commando battle droids, and they're fun, they're tough, but I don't know, there's just this, in this episode, there's a certain terror to them. The way that it's all in a dark scene, and the way that they're all hiding around, I don't know, the walls, trying to get rid of these battle droids. It's just like a horror scene. It's perfect. I love the episode, and more importantly, I love the storyline of Rex finding his lost brother. Let's say that. Now, let's go ahead and talk about number 8, and number 8, without a doubt, is Asajj Ventress's backstory. Okay, so why Asajj Ventress's backstory? So, you know, when I first saw Asajj Ventress, I'll be honest, she was such a one-dimensional character, and I really didn't like her. Throughout the entire series of the Clone Wars, until, of course, Season 5, when we actually get to know her backstory, I never really felt anything towards the character other than I thought she could fight. That's it. I really didn't care about her. And the fact that they are able to make a character like that and put a twist on it to where you end up falling in love with this character and just having a connection with the character is just so amazing. I can't imagine going through what she went through. And the way they used her after this arc, in the other arcs, that this was really the turning point for Ventress for me, when we got to learn her backstory, and then we get to see her become a very interesting character, and the way she works in the other arcs after this one is just interesting, and she obviously becomes one of my favorite characters because of this arc. Let's go ahead and talk about number 7. So number 7, I said that the lore episodes weren't gonna make my list, but the Kyber crystals and the Padawans, oh my god, it's one of the best arcs, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love the lore of the little Padawans getting their Kyber crystals and creating their lightsabers. And really, if I have any little criticism against this arc, it's that I really wish there was more of the kids. I wish there were more arcs from the kids. I wish that they introduced, I think it was like 5 or 6 really interesting characters, being that they are kids. And I was hoping that we were going to get to see these kids grow more as characters, and we really never did. But with that said, this arc isn't on my list because of the kids or because of the lore. It's because of Hondo. I absolutely love Hondo and him trying to steal the Kyber crystals and threatening little kids. He's a pirate down to his core, and the fact that the kids actually end up saving his butt at the end. Favorite arc, definitely. One of the best arcs of Star Wars The Clone Wars, but obviously not my top. Let's go ahead and talk about number 6. Now, number 6, Slaves of, and I pronounce this word wrong all the time, so forgive me, but Slaves of Zygerria. I think that's how you pronounce it, Slaves of Zygerria, or is it Zygerria? Zygerria? I'm not sure. But basically what happens here is Anakin and Obi-Wan go over, and Ahsoka Tano, of course, go over to Planet Zygerria, and they end up being slave holders. And this just leads into such an interesting backstory because we know Anakin is a slave, and the way he uses, the way he acts throughout this entire episode, entire arc, entire storyline, it's why Anakin becomes one of my favorite characters in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I think it was really this arc that solidified Anakin becoming my favorite character in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, because, God, I would probably act the same way. I've never been a slave, but I could imagine being one, and the very fact that it's a very touchy subject anywhere, and the very fact that the Clone Wars is able to do it in such a way where we understand how terrible slavery is just incredible, especially because of what they're able to do with Obi-Wan breaking Obi-Wan's spirit while a slave. It's just interesting. It's very interesting. That's all I'm going to say, but it's definitely one of my favorite arcs of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. So with that said, let's go ahead and talk about my top 5 favorite Star Wars: The Clone Wars storylines. Number 5, Hondo captures Sith and Jedi. So this arc is really, really funny. So it starts out with, of course, Obi-Wan and Anakin going after Dooku. Because they shoot him down, Dooku lands on the planet, and eventually what happens is Hondo, this is the first time we meet Hondo as well. Hondo is a pirate, and he's just rummaging through Dooku's ship at first, and he even offers Dooku a ride, just being nice, being friendly, and Dooku says yes, hoping not to reveal the fact that he's a Sith, and then eventually he does. He gets captured by Hondo, and then Hondo eventually goes and tells the Jedi that, or at least the Republic, that they have him. And the people closest to get Dooku is of course Obi-Wan and Anakin, and the way Obi-Wan and Anakin play off of each other, the banter between each other, it's one of the best arcs of the Clone Wars, definitely. But then they get captured by Hondo, and it becomes this really weird trio of them having to work together to get out of being captured by Hondo. It's just fun. It's just a lot of fun. Okay, so let's talk about my number 4 favorite arc, and my number 4 favorite arc, without a doubt, is War on Onderon. So this is a very, very interesting arc, and it's very, very different. Basically, the people of Onderon are separatists, and they have a couple rebels on Onderon, and they basically want to trade sides and work for the Republic. But the Republic can't because they're in a war. And what I like about this arc is what the Jedi do in this arc. The Jedi are peacekeepers. So they're supposed to be, not in this war at all. They're not supposed to be on one side of the war, and they do want to keep peace throughout the entire galaxy. And it's very hard when they're on one side of the war. So what they decide to do is they decide not to send a lot of help to the rebels, but they decide to go there and teach the rebels how to defend for themselves. And it's very, very interesting. What I like about this arc the most, though, is Ahsoka Tano. So, this isn't the first time that Ahsoka Tano takes charge of herself, but this is really the first arc that I noticed how much Ahsoka Tano has grown throughout the series. She starts out as a very, very cocky little dork kid. Let's face it, she really does. And kind of annoying. Let's face it, she really does. But in this arc, in this it's like 3 or 4 episodes. If you compare her when she started to when she is like in this arc, you can clearly see how she developed, how she is becoming a very strong character, and she absolutely tries her best not to interfere, but she still stands there to try to help at least. And I can't say enough good things about her in this arc. It's just great. And the story with this arc, it's just interesting. I'm not going to spoil the entire story for this arc, but it really is a lot of fun. And if you guys haven't checked it out, I suggest you do. So let's go ahead and talk about my number 3 favorite arc. And my number 3 favorite arc is A Mole on Mandalore. Okay, I came up with that title myself. The real name of the arc is actually Maul's Underworld Empire. And basically what happens is Maul, he's back into play, and he ends up in trouble with the Jedi and everything. So he decides to basically gain forces with, of course, Death Watch and a couple other bounty hunter and just straight up villains of the galaxy as a whole. And then he ends up taking over Mandalore. And what he does on Mandalore, taking control of Death Watch and killing the leader of Death Watch, that was nuts. But that isn't the craziest part of the entire arc either. The craziest part for me, I cannot spoil it. All I'm going to say is it involves the Duchess of Mandalore. That's all I'm gonna say. It's what he does with their. Oh God, it breaks my heart every time I see the scene. You know, I don't exactly cry, but when I first saw that, when I first saw this arc, I was in complete shock. These next coming arcs, my last 3 arcs for Star Wars: The Clone Wars, I was in complete shock, and this was really the first time that I was completely speechless and in shock. What Darth Maul does to the Duchess, I was in complete shock. And then Palpatine shows up, of all things. It's just a great arc, and I won't say any more because then I go into complete spoil territory, and I already have gone into complete spoil territory. But it's such a great arc, and it was the first arc that had me shocked and speechless. I didn't cry, but God, it was complete shock. And even watching it the 3rd time, I knew it was gonna happen, and still I was speechless. I was speechless. With that said, my second favorite arc of Star Wars: The Clone Wars is Order 66. This has to do with while on a mission, another clone trooper from the 501st ends up shooting a Jedi while mid-battle, and he just completely turns on the Jedi, and we simply don't know why. At least the people in Star Wars: The Clone Wars don't know why. We know it's Order 66, and it's completely crazy. That this arc is just a lot of fun, and the way they set up Order 66, again, a very large lore building episode, lore building arc, lore building storyline. Basically, it puts they have this chip in their brains. The clones have chips in their brains, and it has orders 1 through, I think there's like, it's not canon anymore, but I think there was like about 90 or so, or wasn't there like 90 or so orders that was always into play and that they always had to do no matter what? I'm not sure about the number correctly, but Order 66 definitely is canon, and the way it kind of puts them in a trance and in a nightmare-like dream is very, very interesting. And Fives, of all people, Fives is one of the clones that we actually follow throughout the Star Wars: The Clone Wars storyline. And this arc is why Fives became my favorite clone trooper of all of the clones. He even beats Rex for me. And it's simply because he figures it out. He figures out what Order 66 is. He doesn't call it Order 66, but he understands that there's an enormous plot, and he finds out that it even goes all the way up to Palpatine. It goes up to Palpatine! That's right, the Chancellor is in cahoots with this plot to destroy the Jedi. And he does everything he can do to tell the Jedi, to reveal this to somebody. And nobody believes him. Nobody believes him. And then when he dies at the end, I'm sorry to spoil it, but when he dies at the end, again, I didn't cry, but I was in complete, utter shock. It had me speechless. It had me absolutely speechless. And my number 1 favorite arc definitely had me speechless as well. My favorite arc of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, without a doubt, is always going to be, I don't care how good the ending of Season 7 is, my favorite arc will always be Ahsoka on the Run, or what was it called? I think it was called that, right? Ahsoka on the Run. And Ahsoka Tano, basically what happens in this arc is Anakin and Ahsoka get called back to the Jedi Temple because there was a bombing, and anyone except Ahsoka and Anakin could do it because Anakin and Ahsoka were off the planet when the bombing happened. But even a Jedi could have been responsible for the bombing. And in long story short, they basically go through the detective phase, and it's very fun to actually see the detective phase of the Jedi. And they find out that this lady is involved in it, and Ahsoka Tano goes to see this lady, and basically is framed for this lady's death. You see, somebody, it wasn't her, but the way the camera caught it made her look like she ended up killing the lady who bombed the temple. And because of that, she ends up going on the run and ends up finding some very interesting help. And I won't spoil it, but what happens at the very end of this arc is just interesting, satisfying, and saddening all at the same time. I love Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I love this arc, and it's definitely one of the best, hardest arcs to watch, simply just because of my feelings towards Ahsoka. I love Ahsoka Tano, but it's definitely one of the best, and it had me speechless throughout pretty much the entire arc. It had me speechless throughout this entire arc. And even watching it for a third time, I remember every single bit of this arc, you know? And the fact that I remember this arc, the fact that there are certain arcs that are just like nailed into my memory, that when I think back on Star Wars: The Clone Wars, I can recall almost everything that happens in one single arc is incredible. Star Wars: The Clone Wars was such a fantastic and amazing TV show. And I am so happy that they're bringing it back. I am so happy that they will be finishing it. I cannot wait to see Ahsoka Tano in Season 7 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm out. Let me know down in the comments below, what is your favorite Star Wars: The Clone Wars storyline?